Welcome to the channel. I'm David Poe. Today we're going to be painting an impressionistic landscape, and we're going to go over the materials first, and then we'll get started with the sketching. So let me switch the camera mode, and we'll get started. All right, first we're going to start with the reference photo. So this is a creek scene. So one of the reasons I thought this would be a good subject matter is it has the stream as a lead-in. It's always good to have something in the foreground that will lead you back into the painting to hold people's interest. Sometimes that can be a path or a road or any number of different land type scenes, but today this stream certainly helps fit that bill. This scene is from, it's not quite spring yet, so it's still the fading days of winter. And so we don't have a lot going on here. You've got some greens and some browns, of course, in this background. And then, of course, we've got a nice sky, though. We're going to want to take full advantage of the blues and some of the purplish accents that we see in the sky. We also have in this background some white on the trees. And I'm going to try to take a full account of that to help us. And then there, as you notice, there is some difference between some of those greens. Some are a little bit more yellow than others. Some are a little bit darker. So we'll need to include those. We've got some lights on this bank as it runs into the water, and we can see some darks underneath the water. So that's always important for us to take note of, so that when we paint that, we want to start with those darks and then come around it with some of those lighter shades. All right, so I will keep that up, and then we got the panel right over here. And this is a 12 by 16, just a standard canvas panel. And I've got a small studio here in the house, and so we're just using a little desktop easel today. Now let's go and look at the palette and today's colors. So we're going to be looking at using 3 earth tones: burnt sienna, yellow ochre, ivory black. Then for our more brilliant colors, we've got alizarin crimson, cad red light, cad yellow light, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, and then titanium white. So notice that we got 2 reds, what we might call a cooler and a warmer red. We've got a medium yellow in terms of the yellow light. Don't have any other yellows other than the yellow ochre, and then 2 blues, and then the titanium white. These are all, I believe these are all Utrecht colors. Of course, we've got Gamsol mineral spirits. And over here are my brushes. These are Rosemary Co. brushes. And I use a vast different array to get some different marks. These are called Egberts rather. This is the number 2. And I also got, let's see this, what is this number? This is number 6. Turn around so you can see it. There you go. Number 6. Then let's go next with the daggers. We got 3 daggers here, I think. Yeah, and this is where is it? Okay, a 1/4. It's like that. And this is a 3/8. And we've also got a 1/2. Then we've got the swords. I've got a 1/4 sword. And we've got a bigger sword here, a 1/2 inch sword. I love those brushes because you can get some really interesting effects, especially with landscape, where you want some of the wildness of nature rather than the predictability of humankind. And sometimes an artist will bend over backwards to make it a little too realistic in my estimation, which makes it look actually less realistic. Does that make any sense? All right, and then we've got a couple of, let's see, this is a rigger. This is number 2 rigger. And this is a number 4 rigger. And we've got a pointed round. This is a 0. Sometimes people will use this for their signature, that kind of thing. We've also got another rigger. This is a number 8. And finally, I've got an ivory short flat. I don't know if we'll be using all of these, but I do have them here. I've got, of course, an assortment of other palette knives, some cheap brushes as well. And so, at any rate, whatever can make a good mark, I'm pleased to use it. So I'm going to put this phone back and we'll get started. But before we do that, if you like the content, of course you haven't seen it all yet, if you're waiting on that, but feel free to like the channel, subscribe, so that way you'll be one of the first notified when I release a new video. And I do want to thank the over 5,000 people that watched my last video within just a few short days. So I appreciate that, and glad to see that we're over 1,000 subscribers now. So thanks again for all of those that have been watching the channel. All right, let's get started. Okay, we went over the materials, and once again, this is a 12 by 16 canvas panel. I've got the iPad here with the reference photo. I know it's not as easy to see. I'll move it like this once in a while so you can do some comparisons, but I'm kind of doing that intentionally because I don't want you to think that what we're trying to do is copy this exactly. In fact, it's better if we don't think about that as being a copy. So we'll keep it in our mind, but realize that what we want to do is create a work of art, and so we may vary it as we wish, as we need. Okay, so I am using, well, let's see if I can tilt this down as we're, all right, there we go. So I'm using this mixture. Let me move this up so you can see my glass palette here. This is a mixture of just the burnt sienna and Gamsol. So I usually sketch in with this very lightly. You want to start light so that way it's easier to come over top of it in the same painting session with thicker paint. So this should be kind of an inky consistency, if you can see that on there. Inky consistency. And so let's get started. So the horizon line in the reference photo is fairly high. So we're going to do the same. And of course, if you don't know this already, you want to kind of be careful. You certainly don't want the horizon line to be dead in the center of the painting. So the top third is basically going to be some sky, and the bottom is going to be mainly your midground and the foreground in this painting. Okay. And now the major player is going to be this creek. Now you notice the creek is actually in this photograph in the very middle. That's not the best placement. So already in this interpretive process, I'm making decisions. So one of the decisions is that we're going to move this over. And we are going to change the direction of some of these shapes. And that's the other thing, is to think in terms of shapes and not so much in terms of what we're actually seeing. I'm not trying to paint anything at this point. I'm just looking at some of these shapes. Now, here's another decision to make. There's two of these rocks here in the foreground. And do they contribute to the painting or not? I think they do, especially this one over here. It's coming kind of up out of this area. So we're going to kind of just indicate where that's coming up at, because it kind of draws our attention back towards that focal point. And here, I think it may help us to read the water if we put a little bit of this rock that's exposed from the water here. I might change the shape of that a little bit later on, but for right now, there it is. Get a little bit more mineral spirits on here. And in here, there's going to be this area where there's some woods. So, and that's sort of our darkest dark. If I squint down, there's a couple places in the stream that are pretty dark too, but our darkest are over in this area. So I'm going to begin just to kind of loosely put the shapes in. And this is, what is this? This is the dagger brush. It's really wonderful at doing this and helping to just kind of let go a little bit, not be too concerned. Kind of looking at those shapes. Of course, there's some trees that go all the way up. So we're not going to paint lines yet. I'm just going to kind of indicate where some of those shapes are. So you'll notice that the trees look a lot taller over here because they're closer to us. Over right in this section here where the highlight is, where the stream goes way back, there's not as much. There's going to be more sky here. So I'm making sure that I indicate that. And then quickly it goes back up as this ground here is much closer to us. There's actually some trees up here coming up in this way, so we'll just get a little bit of a background for where some of those other colors and branches are going to be. See how lightly I'm putting it in? Get a little bit more Gamsol. Very light. Don't need much. Okay. Now we're coming down. I'm looking at some other things that are going on in this landscape. So the sky is usually the lightest. So we're going to leave that kind of white. I like to sometimes do what I would call a little tonal drawing of the shapes with the tonal values. So I'm squinting down and seeing that there's another shape, another tone, kind of in this area, and trying to figure out, is that darker? Yeah, it's a little darker because it's coming towards us. So this time I'm going to add a little bit more of the burnt sienna, and I'm going to put more pressure on the brush. Basically, I'm not changing the color in. I'm not putting titanium white in or anything like that. All I'm doing now is focusing on putting a little bit more pressure here. And I'm looking at some of the edges of the shoreline where we see some of the ground plane and some rocks and such. So we're gonna especially see it right there. And I don't have to be careful. I'm not worried about how that might look yet. Like I said, sometimes the randomness of it is kind of what we want anyway. Then we got another dark on this rock. It's also a little bit of a dark here. A little bit more burnt sienna on the brush. And I'm picking up a little bit of that. It's also going to have some greens, but for right now, I don't want to lose the fact that we got some shapes here that are a little darker. And there's a spot here that kind of stands out a little bit. Now, I had mentioned that there's some darks, of course, in this water line. I start kind of over here in this corner. And as it goes back towards this shape here, it's a little less noticeable. There's some of that same effect, kind of run it this way. All right. There's also a few little darker areas here. Come down like this a little bit. Oops. All right. Okay, it probably looks like a bunch of nothing right now, and that's okay. I'll clean my brush off. Two directions we could go. We could work on the darkest darks, or the sky. Today I feel like getting that light sky in will be helpful to the judgment of our other colors. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to switch brushes up and now pick up this Rosemary Ivory Short Flat number 6. Get a little bit of mineral spirits in it. Let's see, where can you see? Trying to watch on that panels. Here, we'll put it there. Well, my titanium white is dried up. See if I can get that. Well, I better put some more titanium white. One mistake we can sometimes make is to not put enough paint out. And in this case, it was on my palette for a while, and so it's already dried. All right. Now it should be in business. Now I've got two blue choices here, so I'm going to toque, and I'm going to start off with the phthalo blue. Once again, having a little bit of trouble because of, there we go. Now the phthalo, you gotta use just a little bit. A little dab will do you with the phthalo blue. What we're going to do is we're going to add some ultramarine blue into this mixture. Put a little bit more titanium white. Okay, so I think that's pretty close. And I see this blue closest to where we have the trees. Still, you don't have to be too accurate right now. I'm just thinking about putting little pieces of paint down to indicate this. And of course, there's some in here. I'm looking now in this area to begin putting in what I would call our sky holes. Now, I'm not trying to be accurate with what's in the photo. And these colors are going to be darker later on. Just barely touching the canvas here. All right, now a little bit of the ultramarine blue, which is going to warm it up. Ultramarine blue has a little more red in it. Phthalo blue has a little bit more green in it. And of course, of those two colors, green and red, what is warmer? Well, we would associate red with a warmer color. Okay, now I don't think that's, nope. I want this to be a little darker. Now the photo is going to not serve us well in thinking about color. Here we have to rely upon our experience of seeing the scene when we took the photo, maybe some notes that we took, maybe a little study that we took. Otherwise, we can be tricked into putting a color that's really not there. I like to leave some room there so that I can mix the two colors together on the actual canvas rather than putting it on the palette. When I'm painting skies, I tend to use vertical strokes. Okay, get these in. Once again, I'm thinking about the shapes. I'm not thinking about this is sky, these are trees, anything like that. Like I said, the ones up top are going to be darker, so for lighter touch, I'm just kind of going over the top of those. That should give us a little bit of variety. Which will also help us. Okay. Take and wipe that color off. Now I'm going to take some titanium white on the brush, put a little pile here, and now I'm going to work a little bit of that in between the colors. Okay, time to get another piece of towel. Now I'm going to just blend those two colors together a little. Same thing here. All right. So now I got the first go at the skies in. And now I'm going to look at some greens. We'll start with our darkest greens, ultramarine blue. Let's see, can you see? Yeah, there you go. You can see that pile. And of course the cad yellow light. And a little bit of the burnt sienna that's right next to it. And to darken that a little bit, I'm just going to mix in a little bit of the alizarin crimson. And now a little bit more of the ultramarine blue. All right. Now I'm judging by squinting, and this is the darkest dark right here. Now, which brush do I want to use for this? I think I want to change brushes. And I'm going to use the 1/4 dagger. Add a little bit of Gamsol. Not using any medium today. All right, now, where do I see this? See this color? Just thinking about the shape. Not worried about being too perfect with the shape either. There's this nice greenish line, basically. It's pointing its way over here. Some over here too. Of course, a reminder that don't get too caught up in any details yet. All we're doing is focusing on some shapes. Allow yourself to be confident in knowing that you can do things later on that are going to make this look like something. Right now, it doesn't look like anything. But you may be surprised by the time, hopefully you'll be surprised, by the time we get to the end of the painting. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of cad yellow light into that mixture. Not a whole lot, but a little bit, for the darks of these trees up here. And see how, look at holding that brush like this, get this wonderful ability to shape some trees in there. There's a little bit of a break here. Want to connect our darks though, so I'm going to then there's this. Same color. the brush stroke so we get some variety here. Okay. Now the next darkest dark is actually in the riverbed. And it is about this color, but a little bit more yellow, a little bit more of the cad yellow light. We'll lighten this up. And let me see what this looks like. See a little bit of titanium white. It's leaning toward a brownish green, so I'm going to put a little bit of the burnt sienna in it. Not a lot. I don't want to change it to this color. I'm going to keep this mixture pretty loose. Okay, I like that. I think that's pretty close. And what I mean by that is that I want a kind of base color, and then I can work from that with some variations. So and see how this dagger just allows me to make some strokes that are not as mechanical, because I don't have as much control over this. And then by sort of holding back on the handle some, I can get even more variety like that. Okay, this kind of has a... There we go. Varying the brush strokes a little bit here. Still keeping that paint pretty light there. Now here's that rock formation, so we got some more of the water over here. Thin it with my mineral spirits. relying on a few happy accents there. I like to leave a few little spots unpainted so that when I come back in, I can more easily put a few details in those spaces to cover it up and make sure I'm not using the same kind of stroke all the time. Okay, now I need to mix up a little bit more of that green. Okay, add yellow, ultramarine blue, some titanium white, and some burnt sienna. And when you mix it right in on the palette like that, inside the color that you just made, you can more easily judge if that's correct or not. I'm going to put a little bit more, just a little dab of titanium white, because it's lighter as it goes back into this area. So. Adding a little bit more titanium white. As it sits back in that way. Now, to help with the illusion of water, I'm trying to pull the strokes downward towards us, towards the viewer. There's a few spots there. Okay. Now there's some more bright yellows and greens on the grass plane. So let's see if you can see. Here you can see this part of the palette. Okay. A little bit of the phthalo blue mixed in with this green. And tone it down a little bit with the cad red light. All right. A little bit of mineral spirits. And now we're going to go back in where I see a few spots of this color. So there's still with that dagger brush. Here. Especially see it coming in from the side over here. See how I already made some of that middle ground kind of pop. Now we got a bunch of browns, different darker browns, lighter browns. So for that, I think I'm going to return to my flat brush. This is the Rosemary Short Flat number 6. Clean this up a little bit. Another paper towel. Once again, thank you. You've been watching now for about a half an hour. If you like the content, it would really help out if you would subscribe, so that way you'll know when there's another painting being developed, and give a thumbs up if you are enjoying this process with me at this point. Let me take a moment and let me show you what this reference photo looks like at this point. Of course, I'm just giving an impression, and so I'm not worried about the colors. I'm worried more about the shapes and the tonal values at this point, and that they're reading about correct. And we'll get to some of those, but we won't. Best to reserve judgment until you get the first pass. In other words, you're covering the canvas now with the initial block in of colors, and then we can make various changes to those colors afterwards, especially if we keep it very thin. You've noticed all these mixtures are very thin, so that we can come back on over top of it. All right, so now we're going to mix a brown. So I've got a lot of titanium white. You know what? Let me scrape off the palette a little bit. It's always best, if you want clean color, to make sure that you clean your palette off once in a while. It can be kind of helpful to keep some of those colors on there for a little while. And if you're conscientious about your color and wasting of paint, well, you're not wasting paint. You can always use that for something else. I set the leftovers over to the side here on my palette, so you can't see them, but they're there. All right, titanium white, and now I'm going to use a little bit of the yellow ochre. It's been sitting on my palette a little bit, so it's a little hard. There we go. Definitely seeing a lot of this color. So we're going to start with this to get this canvas colored. The lightest is back here, so we're going to start there, so that way if my brush gets dirtier as I'm painting, it won't affect it as bad. And it picks up over here. And here I got some of those darks already, so I'm going to do a little stroke, come down, get some more paint, make another little stroke, come down, get a little bit more paint, another little stroke. See how just putting this down little pieces of paint, really varying it now, and this is much thicker paint I'm putting down. Gives us some variety. Taking this color all the way down. rock there, so we're gonna sketch that in, and there's light showing on the top of that rock there. So we'll go ahead and kind of get that in there. I can come back in with some darker darks on top of there. See, really the only way I could paint this is if I think of it as shapes and not worry about trying to actually copy everything that I'm seeing over here. It would just be a nightmare to try to do that. Pretty dark rock here, but there's a few little spots of color. Down here, this rock. Put a piece down, color, another piece. As you begin shaping it. This gives us a base color down here to kind of work with. Before we get into some details. You got this whole space in here. It needs to be worked on. Add a little bit of titanium white into this mixture. Some more yellow ochre. Color down. And this is thicker paint. Now I'm actually blending a few of those in. So go into that spot. Bit of the Gamsol. Now I'm adding a little bit more of the yellow ochre and a little bit of the burnt sienna. And a little bit of the ultramarine blue. Create a different kind of brown here, a little bit darker in tonal value. And where am I seeing this color most? I'm seeing this color most in this area over here. Obviously these are some individual rock formations, but I'm not going to be able to paint all kinds of variety here. Since this sits back, I'm using little shorter brush strokes. Which will help us read it as more complex than it actually is. Vertical strokes also, horizontal rather, also help with that effect. Okay. Now, we still have some of these brown parts showing. What I'm going to do is lightly go over them. I don't want to cover everything up, but I do want to cover some of it up. I'm not putting a lot of color down. Just kind of dragging my brush over it. Don't want as much of that red showing. I do want some of it showing. Get rid of that white down here. You sort of have to, as an artist, begin to think about a painting before you even start in terms of layers. And that what you want is some variety. Colors on top of colors, but not making mud. That's why the principle of fat over lean comes in, where you're putting fatter strips of paint over tops of lighter strips of paint as you are painting. Now I'm coming in with this color, and I see a dot of white poking through. That gives me an indication of where I could come in and make sure I cover that while providing a little bit of a break with these whole colors, these mid-tone values that I've already put in there. And since this is a lighter color, I'll be coming back in over it with some darker colors in just a moment, so that kind of even itself out here in a minute. And the only way you kind of get used to this is by painting. You just have to keep working at it keep painting. Be best if you paint every single day. You really are not going to get much better if you don't paint every single day. I've noticed some variations now as we get closer to the other colors, and so I'm putting some of those variations in. All right, and now, let's see, oh, there's a few over here. Just kind of varying my brush strokes, suggesting a few things there. All right. This spot here is also a darker area. I'm going to put a little ultramarine blue. You may be asking, why don't I use my ivory black? Well, black has a way of becoming a hole on the canvas, and so as long as I can keep from using it, I do. But there are times in which it could be useful. I do tend to not use it very much, even though I still put it on the palette, so I don't know, maybe one day it'll totally be gone from my palette, I'm not sure. Okay, that looks close to the value that I want and the color hue that I want. So now I'm just suggesting a little bit of variety in those color masses I'm seeing. And I'm not trying to think too hard about this. Maybe there are other artists that do, but to my style, the quicker and the less that I'm thinking about some of this stuff, the better sometimes my paintings come out in terms of freshness and vitality, I think. I don't know. You be the judge, right? Letting it mix a little bit with what's already there. And it's amazing what the brain does. It reads these abstract shapes as if they were actually something. All right, now I'm taking a little step back for a second to see how well this is looking. And going a little slower than I thought it would today. Now I need those background trees. So I'm going to paint a green, but it's got to be a fairly light green. We're still going to use the cad yellow light. Let's see. I don't know if you can see that mixture there. And a little bit of ultramarine blue. And then some titanium white, so just a little bit. I'll lighten this up quite a bit in that background. In fact, maybe even more than that. A good way to tell is to put it up against your other colors. I think I kind of like that. I think that needs to be a little bit lighter. Okay, yeah, I like that. Still using rather light paint here, so that way I don't want to get too close to those ragged edges right now. I will shape those a little bit later. I just want to get the value down. And you see that some of that brown's showing through, which is good. I don't want to necessarily cover everything. That's where you gotta be a little bit more patient there. I don't want to destroy all the blues that I put in so far. Be sure to paint it. You notice that we've gone all over the canvas, and that's intentional. We're bringing the painting to life, not little section by little section, but all kind of at one time. And that really does help create the sense that this was effortless, that it goes together, the colors, the scene. Okay. See how that's pushing all these trees forward? That's exactly what I wanted to have happen. Now here, notice you don't have to be very precise. Your eyes are going to read this as there's some shapes here of trees. Now, are they trees? Do they look like trees? Not really, but you're not viewing them right up close. You're viewing them from a distance. And from a distance, that looks it's not as sharp or detailed, and that's precisely what we want. And nor do we have to fuss too much with attempting to make more sense of it than it is. And here I'm also concentrating on the fact that I don't want a bunch of hard edges back here. You don't find many hard edges in nature, do you? Now, if this was a building we were painting, then that would be a different story, but it's not. Okay. Now I'm going to concentrate on this ridge there. So I don't want any hard edges. So I just kind of pull the paint up into the sky and trying to not make anything too much of a pattern. Of course, right here is where it goes back the furthest, so we don't want that to be too detailed at all there. Okay, right here. Pull this into the blue. Once again, just concentrate on the shapes and allow the viewer room to work. I think that really is one of the biggest keys to painting is allowing room for the viewer to do his or her part in seeing it. What would be the fun, at least in my understanding of what I'm trying to accomplish in art, what would be the fun of painting it in such great detail that someone would come along and say, oh wow, you know, I saw a photograph like that. You know, I don't want them to say, oh, I saw a photograph like that. I want them to think, wow, that is beautiful. That kind of reminds me of a particular place. Maybe this particular place is knowable to them. Maybe not. That's okay too. But it might recall a childhood memory. It might recall a vacation or a respite or some other time in their life. Maybe it just conveys to them a sense of wonderment or calm. How many of us have stressful days? And art can be so relaxing. And it's why I actually got into it, was as a sort of a break from the 9-to-5 job and some of the stress that comes with that. If you are someone who works in an industry where you don't always see results, painting could very much be helpful to you, because after you're done with this process, you have a result, you have a painting. And maybe in your own line of work, you don't get to see what becomes of some of the stuff that you do on a daily basis, because you're one among so many in the corporation or the company or the business. And see here, right now, I'm not really thinking about, absolutely not thinking about trees. I'm thinking about suggesting where some of this is. And I'm also thinking about layers, that this is the kind of the color behind some of the details. Kind of thinking backwards, because we're going to put details over top of this, right? So if you can see it in your mind, it's so much easier. Okay. And see a little bit of this color down here that I wanted to put in. Okay, now couple places right there. And it's also good to get back from it once in a while and take a look at what you're doing. Now, kind of the fun part is we put a few details in. I'm going to start with the sky color. So titanium white and a little bit of the phthalo blue. And then a little bit of cad yellow light into it. See how I like that. Does that look like a add a little bit more phthalo blue into it. And a little bit more titanium white perhaps. There we go. Okay, I like that mixture a little bit. And I'm seeing it in the water shades. Not a lot, but a little. That's coming down on this side. Now it's going to come over this way and add a little titanium white. We're going to make this a little bit brighter. It would seem like it would be brighter back there, but it's the exact opposite. So, and we're dragging it down to give the appearance of a reflection. So be very careful and mindful of what you're doing here. We want some of that other color there to show through, so that it looks like it's underneath the reflections. Remember to make this a little bit thicker. I see a little bit over in this section as well. Step back now, take a look at that. I'm even going to now scrape it off, and we're going to start with some detailed little lines for some of these trees. And for that we are going to use some titanium white, a little bit of the yellow ochre, our lightest of lights, and then we're going to have another pile using some ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, a nice dark purple. And then I'm going to get, this is number 2 ivory rigger. Dipping it into the Gamsol. And now into my paint. I want this to be kind of an inky consistency, fairly light. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to pick out a few of the details. There's one here. A couple over here as well. And I get that paint on there and I just pull it up through there. Couple marks back here. Make sure you're taking your time and getting that Gamsol on there so it'll show up a little bit better for you. And a couple over here. And take your time, do a couple more strokes. Just kind of
brush to do its job. If it pulls a couple of the colors together, that's okay too. Of course, we don't want a bunch of lines. Actually, when the paint stops coming off, it's kind of a nice effect, I think. So don't worry too much about that. Of course, not all branches go one direction, so be sure to give a couple other some other directions. Take your time and just focus on a few. You don't need a lot of detail. You just need a little bit of detail. And that will be very suggestive of trees going back in that area. All right, so now I'm pretty good. Oops, it's kind of a nice one over here in the front of this dark. Okay. Oh, and there's a couple of reflections of these trees going down in that water. Let me get that other one there. Okay. There's also this light on top of this rock I want to get in. Some over here on this rock as well. Now I'm just looking at any place else where I see this color that might want to be put in there. Or where there's a need to break up maybe a larger color with a few little details. So. Now for the darker darks, same process as before. Then get some Gamsol on the brush. Add a little bit more of that ultramarine blue to it. It's getting a little bit too purpley. And a little bit more of the alizarin crimson. Kind of an inky constitution, so it kind of runs off the brush a little bit. All right, now I go in with a few of the darker trees. Just kind of twist the brush up. Didn't really want that to happen, but you can kind of paint through some of that. What happens is that those lights kind of help us see the darks, and the darks kind of help us see the lights. Varying your pressure on the brush will help out immensely. Remember that the branches don't just go in one direction, they go all over the place. Using a really fine rigger will help in that as well. Not as many over here, of course, as we get closer to that background there. Over here, there's a couple of dominant ones. I'm going to cut this off for a second, and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back with you. This will be a good moment to remind you, if you like the content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate that. All right. A couple more spots. I get a few of the darker trees in. And like this, you don't want to be too careful. Get that, get the inky consistency of the brush, and then just kind of twirl it. And of course, the background color kind of reminds you that's where the leaves are. We're not going to draw a bunch of leaves. And we don't want too many details leading our viewers away from the center. I don't want to leave this little guy by himself, so all right. And now I gotta go back and make sure that we got some They're going in different directions, not just up. And make sure you pull some of those trees all the way off of the canvas. Sometimes newbies tend to forget. It looks much more realistic. Trees don't stop somewhere up there. Now I'm barely pressing it because I don't want a whole lot of detail here, but I do want to give the kind of a faint understanding that there's some trees back here too. Otherwise, it's just too much. There we go. All right. I'm pretty satisfied with that. Now I want to go back in and hit my darkest darks again. I'm going to use one of the swords, I think, for this. Get that cleaned up a little bit. Mix in a little bit more of my ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson. Instead of using ivory black, purple is really a good dark color. It's actually darker than black, and it has more vibrancy. Doesn't look like a hole on the canvas, in other words. Okay. So where do I want some of these darkest darks? Well, right here where there was that initial rock. See, I'm just basically going back in over top of some of the areas where it already gone, creating some of those darks. They kind of end right in this area here. There's a big. One up this way. I can kind of create what I want to here. Brush it over that way a little bit. There's also a little bit of darks up this way. Put a little spot up here. And by these trees, there's a little bit. Two little places over here. Certainly over here, there's a number of things going on up here that not quite sure what they are. Some grasses and so forth, or some rocks. So we're gonna suggest a few little spots. Now, one color that's not terribly prominent in this landscape is orange, but we got some red tones, but I would like to put a few places of orange here for emphasis. The eye really needs the complements, and so purple loves to be around orange. We use a little bit of alizarin crimson, cad red light, and then the cad yellow light to create a kind of dirty orange here. And we're just going to put a few spots in, see how it looks. Especially putting it to help direct the viewer's eyes. So you notice I'm kind of putting it where we have some orange already. I mean purple rather. That will make the purple more intense. Okay, I'm going to take a look from back here, see where we are. Okay, I need some variation of brown right in that area there, so got something that might work here. Okay. Back look at this. Go back up in the sky. Pull some of the strokes down. Okay. Take some of this dark. Oops. Still with me? All right, battery's almost over. That's okay. We're going to finish up here in just a minute. I want to make sure that we can see the shoreline. Let's get that for that. There we go. Same way on the other side here a little bit. Well, I can make it different, but I don't know that I can make it better. So, time to sign. There's a lot of action over here, so I'm going to sign over here today. I like to kind of carve my name into the painting rather than paint it, so I use a little rubber tip and do that. Well, thank you so much for watching the video. I'll show you a couple close-ups, and then we'll end this video with a reminder that hopefully you subscribe to the channel, give us a like, a thumbs up, and then join us for the next video. Thank you.